Hello and welcome back to the Scale Debate, where five smart people attempt to explain why retail keeps buying the shiny object rather than fixing the plumbing, which is what's needed. Today's question for our debate is simple. What should retailers actually be investing in over the next decade, rather other than just payment and logistics? What are they going to say? Logistics, culture, security, or, well, agentic, maybe? Who knows? Well, kind of we do. This is our second to last episode of the debate series with a lot of tough questions asked. And this has been a hugely incredible and welcoming production to be a part of. We certainly welcome you here. Thanks for our friend SCAYLE for working with us on this. As you know, this debate series is brought to us by SCAYLE, the enterprise e-commerce platform built from the ground up for enterprise retail. Replatform in under 7 months, launch new markets in minutes, and execute even your most ambitious promotions fast. No more bottlenecks, no more pain, just a platform that really works. We're going to find out today. Clearly, we're going to hear a lot of AI, but I have a feeling from this group, we're not just going to hear AI. We're actually going to hear about fundamentals. I'm excited to get into it. Let's hear first from Matt Ezyk, the pithy master.
To me, data and experimentation is first and foremost. So investing in data and testing before you waste another dollar on all these shiny tools that are out there. Building strong data foundations and clean analytics, and invest in experimentation tools to validate ideas quickly, and focus on AI in operations, so like pricing and inventory and content before all the marketing hype that you can test out there.
This is exciting to hear from Matt. He opens by planting a giant flag in the ground. Data comes before everything else. It's a prerequisite, actually, for clarity. In verbatim, he says, data and experimentation is first and foremost. So investing in data and testing before you waste another dollar on these shiny tools. He's actually doubled down on foundations, not fireworks. Ultimately, if your analytics are a mess, AI won't save you. It'll just hallucinate with increasing confidence. So I'm excited to hear Matt's take. So thank you, Matt. Next up, we have Rob Garf, who I think has a similar take, but he's maybe just slightly angrier about it. So let's hear from Rob.
Logistics in particular go back to the convenience aspect, getting the product where, when, and how the consumer wants it, and not put the burden on the consumer, but rather make it a seamless experience as well as any retailer can do. And that might mean them distributing themselves or using third parties. I throw data in there, and anybody listening to this will probably laugh who's been around long enough as I have, because I could have answered that question for the last 25 years the same way. And there's been a lot of software categories that have emerged to hit the data question, right? Whether it's back in the day, data warehouse or BI, and now, of course, data lake or CDP or PIM or DAM, or the list goes on. But what we are finding is actually based on research that Cordial just released a couple days ago about how AI is totally redefining the shopping funnel, is 60%, so almost two-thirds of retailers that we surveyed don't trust their data. So it's a house of cards. You can't build on top of that data foundation. And so it's not just about managing structured data, it's managing unstructured data, which AI is uniquely well suited to be able to cull through and access and organize. but it's also data enrichment as well. And I think that's really important as consumers, whether they're going through third-party platforms or directly onto retailer brand sites, which by the way aren't going away, need a way to filter and search. And that is all based on data around attributes of the product, data around attributes and profile and behaviors of the consumer, and the brand as well, and how the brand needs to express themselves. So I think it's this really interesting Venn of data as it relates to product, customer, and brand, in looking at that all together to be able to have the brand express exactly what the consumer wants based on their intent. And I think that's a really important point. No longer can stale or static data be leveraged for personalization. We're seeing with our clients, being able to really personalize at render has changed the game. And they're able to do that because they have instant access to all the data on customer, product, and brand.
Maybe I overpromised on the angriness. Something just hit me, and there was almost like a sad despair in his voice when he talked about answering the same question the same way for the last 25 years, which is hilarious. Ultimately, the alphabet soup of acronyms continues to evolve from data warehouse, data lake, BI, CDP, PIM, DAM. But the punchline of 2/3 of retailers don't trust their data, and then ultimately the killer closer. You can't build on top of that bad data foundation. So if data has been the same problem for 25 years, what makes us think that the 26th year is going to be different? Spoiler alert, it's not going to be different. So that's a challenge. Thanks, Rob, for delivering that hidden rant in your own way. So it was exciting to see that. Next up is our resident expert, Suze Dowling, our operator in chief. She tells us that you're not data poor, you're decision poor. So a little bit different angle on the same problem. Let's hear it from Suze.
I think it's, where does the opportunity lie here? I think it's not really going to be just like more dashboards or more data. I'm like, honestly, I have so much data, I don't really know what to do with it half the time. I think the problem at the moment, at least for me, isn't the information. I think it's a lot of the time it's more the speed of information, because I think a lot of us are really like drowning in signals, but then we're starving for the decision of something, right? So I think that's the daily reality of running a brand, or in our case, like multiple brands. I think you've got Shopify dashboards telling you one thing. You're then logging into your ad platform. Then you're logging into Northbeam. Then you're logging and looking at your order management system. And then your CX team is flagging issues in the inbox. And you're jumping between all of these different systems to get a read on what's happening in a 360 way. I think by the time you gathered a lot of that data, you've debated the options, and you've maybe scheduled the meeting with your team to then talk about the options some more, the window may have closed and that moment's passed. And so to me, I think the investment is, how do we solve for that bottleneck? Because I think it's not that we don't know enough. It's like, how do you synthesize it enough that you can act even faster on what we already know? So I think next wave of software to me is not just collecting more signals. It's going to be, how do we shorten that loop from signal to decision to execution? And I think it's across all facets of all teams, right? How do we launch variations for creative in hours and minutes? How do we look at our merchandising systems to real time really adapt to pricing and allocation? I think it's how we use our AI co-pilots to really unify marketing, ops, finance, etc. I think that's how we win, as businesses, because I think it's going to be, how do we as a business have the fastest reflex and the shortest kind of distance between knowing and doing? And I think perhaps the bigger implication here is that the software that closes this gap, that doesn't just make you faster, it's going to change how the teams work together, right? Because I think it's going to hopefully one day eliminate the context switching. It's going to hopefully eliminate some of the meeting load. And it gives you time to almost actually operate instead of just being like an analyst. And I think that means it's giving you capacity, and then capacity is kind of what lets you scale without burning people out and also without adding unnecessary headcount. So I think what I'd be investing in is anything that's reducing that distance, in tools that are collapsing those silos, and then in kind of tools that are automating that translation of like, what is the insight and how do we take action on that? Because I think that's going to be the competitive advantage that we have, is just like who can act the fastest when the data changes and really do more with what they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Honestly, I have so much data, I really don't know what to do with it half the time. Maybe the most honest comment in the whole series. We're drowning in these signals and we're starving for decisions. And so when I think about the modern marketer's hell, your Shopify dashboards, ad platform, Northbeam, management system, customer experience data, all these things, what do you pay attention to? What do you bubble up to your boss in terms of like, this is what happened, this is what it means, this is what we should do, this is how we're going to judge success? Can you actually figure out what digital marketing or e-commerce performance meeting on a weekly basis you've actually been in every week for the past several months that actually had that framework? So lowering that time, by the time you get the data, the moment's passed and it's too late. So Suze really paints this sort of, depending on what retailer you're at, could be a utopian vision to really shorten the distance between knowing and doing. And so which one is your team worse at? It might be something to reflect on. So thanks so much, Suze, always from the operator's point of view. Next up, we have our resident anthropologist, Dave Finnegan, who says that the future is actually more culturally resilient software. Let's take a listen.
From my perspective, retailers should be investing in software that has cultural resilience, which means it understands and adapts to the customer in real time. That's the first thing. The second thing that I think about is personalization. Most people do personalization on you track me level. When I talk about personalization, I'm talking about the you get me kind of level for customers. And so investing in a tool that allows us to not just track the customer, but to understand the customer and reflect back the customer. I call it more mirrors, less megaphones, a much higher level of personalization that tells the person that we understand you, we hear you, we see you. And then the last piece, which we just talked about a little bit, was crucially that it's agent ready, because I think that's where we're going to see continued shift into agents that do some of this lifting for us. In short, I think the infrastructure that we should invest in has agility, and it adapts to people's changing behavior and not just how they transact.
It's interesting what Dave is speaking about here. If mirrors beats megaphones, what is your brand actually holding? Is your brand holding a mirror up to the customer, or are they shouting at the customer from a rooftop? So ultimately, that idea that you have a picture of your customer and you can intimately get what they're doing, rather than just feeling like, oh, I need to track them, I have all this data, what do I do with it? Real-time personalization seems to be the big ask from Dave, as distinct from the other debaters. And so we had, just to review for a second, we had Matt and Rob who are on the data train, we have Suze who's on the decision train, and now Dave is slightly askew of that in terms of real-time personalization. Do you really intimately understand? When he talks about cultural resilience, he's really talking about, like, as your customer changes and go through different stages, are you following them? As their children get older, as their family changes, that changes retail. And if you understand how your customers are changing, then you're going to sell more and you're going to connect with your customers more and make them more loyal. So that seems like a great investment to me. Thanks, Dave. Finally, we have, last but not least, Lee Trotter from Data Realm. He talks about security. Let's see how this plays to the audience, but it gives us an interesting debate perspective that we're going to see play out here.
I think security, actually. You see all the security hacks and the penetrations that happen everywhere out there. And I think it's getting to the point where it's not a question of like, have you been hacked? It's a question of when are you getting hacked, right? For most companies that are out there. And the problem with the security, though, is it's not sexy. It's up there with infrastructure. It's just behind the scenes and it just works away. But when it doesn't work, everyone knows it doesn't work, right? It's like, when I worked in IT as an administrator, the ideal state is no one actually knows you exist and they wonder why they have an IT department until the printer doesn't work, right? And then, at that point, everyone is screaming, right? And security is kind of that same thing, right? No one wants to necessarily invest in it because they don't actually see the ROI or any sort of like feedback from it, but it's a trust factor with your customers, right? And the problem with trust is once you break it, it's really hard to get it back, right? So, we've seen major security issues happen out there, and how does a company then re-earn that customer's trust when it's been bad enough, right? And the risk here is it's becoming so commonplace, like our customers just starting to accept it. Are they changing their buying patterns to go, well, maybe I'll just start using, the spam email addresses, and I'll use the throwaway credit cards, and I'll just like manage my own security, and I'll not worry about how badly whatever product it is I'm buying is going to do it, because the product is worth the risk at that point. Or they don't buy it because they're not willing to take that risk because they can't trust it. It's where you're using like an online wallet as opposed to putting your credit card directly into a website. I personally, if I am buying from a third party, like a website directly from a manufacturer, and I have the option to use a wallet, I will use the wallet because I am not putting my credit card into their particular system, because I don't know how they're managing my credit card information. Are they doing it properly with all the appropriate protection? But if I'm using a wallet, then I know the wallet is protecting my credit card in that case.
Lee is the consummate IT guy. And so I just love it. Like, his answer speaks to the personal pain of an IT department whose customer satisfaction rating doesn't go from 100%, everyone's satisfied with you, down to 0, no one's satisfied with you. It's almost like your top you could ever do in IT is 0%, meaning you're invisible. And as soon as you do anything wrong, your customer satisfaction rating is negative 100%. It's almost like a shipping company. If you either product is on time or late, and people aren't going to cheer about it, they're just going to expect it to work. So security, it definitely feels to me like customers are getting more eye-rolled at the latest 500 million credit cards leaked. We're just assuming our credit cards are leaked, and all the major banks are protecting us from that anyway. But really the emotional blow, I think, behind Lee's comments is the problem is trust is once you break it, it's very hard to get it back. You can build up trust over a lifetime, and unless you have that mea culpa, you're not going to get there. So like plumbing, no one appreciates security until something bursts. And so if you're going to start with investments, don't start with the customer. Don't start with like, you can show up to work and your data is secure and your infrastructure works properly. Because if your infrastructure fails, nothing else matters. That's really Lee's view on the situation. So I'm really excited to hear that we had so many different perspectives from the debaters this week. From Matt and Rob talking about data, rather than choosing shiny tools. And Rob speaks about not just having data, but data you trust. Suze is like, data is great, but we got so much of the data, even if you trust it, the key is the action. And particularly from an entrepreneurial point of view, without action, you have nothing. And so the downside of action is too much action can be negative if you don't, more of it's like ready, fire, aim, rather than ready, aim, fire. So Dave takes the debate in a little bit different direction. He's talking about real-time personalization, knowing your customers, really getting your customers, not just having information about your customers. And finally, Lee Trotter is like, you marketers, you so funny. What happens if all your data leaks out to the dark web? You screwed at that point. So that's the thing. As always, here's what we're doing now. We're going to vote. You decide who's going to win, who answered with insight, who answered with honesty, and who just described your internal tech stack a little too accurately. So we're going to vote now and play some groovy music while you do so. Who resonated with you today? Can I say this? Holy crap. We've never had this before. We have a three-way tie. What do we do? I have no idea. But our debate is over. You can't pick a winner. And I think the result of this debate saying, what do we need to invest in? Real-time personalization, decision-making, or data? It's crazy. Everyone is really torn here. Do you like data? Do you want more decisions? Do you want real-time personalization? Apparently, like your boss, you freaking want it all and you want it now. And so why do I have to pick? Yes, please. I would like some more. So thank you for all the debaters in this thing. Sorry we didn't choose a winner this week, but just like kindergarten now, everyone's a winner. You get a car, you get a car, and you get a car. In the meantime, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you today and to take you through this debate. As a reminder, I'm Rick Watson. We'll see you next week. And assuming your data is clean, your systems are secure, and your AI has not yet formed its own union. We'll be back next week. See you next time.